Hey, raccoons. I brought some Swedish fish today to my screencast. I don't know if that turns out backwards when you see it or not. I've seen some Zooms and people's shirts are like backwards. So I bought these for Mr. Curtis's birthday. It's May 6th. So if you want to send him a birthday wish, you can do that. But today we're going to talk about target market. And I was just thinking about if Mr. Curtis is your target market. How do you even handle that? If Mr. Curtis is your target market, then you think about like what's going on in his head. What is he thinking about at all times? Um, what makes him tick? So when you're creating your brand, creating your logo, creating your color palette, your scheme, you really want to get inside the head of your customer. And that's really what target marketing is just trying to figure out what that person is like. So if it's Mr. Curtis, like what does he do on weekends? Where does he shop? What does he do for fun besides like shop for pictures of raccoons and talk about raccoons? And he goes on Twitter. He's a social studies teacher, so he really likes history. I know he's grocery shopping for his elderly neighbors. He loves old people and young people, and he loves his wife Pam. She's adorable. And I know he likes theater, he likes music, he likes sports. So all those things help us to tell a little bit about the target market of Mr. Curtis. So think about who you want your target market to be, and you really want to start getting in their heads, which is called psychographics. So we're going to talk about that today for a little bit about target market and product positioning. I'm not making my slides full screen because I have notes sometimes that I want you to see. So first you're going to kind of do this all together. So normally if you're creating a brand, you're really not going to go step by step like I'm doing. You're going to do today and tomorrow's and Friday's lesson kind of all at the same time, but I'm going to show you step by step. So when you're figuring out who your target market is, you want to think about like everybody wants to come to my business, everybody's going to want to use my brand, but who really is that typical customer going to be? So how old are they? What is their gender? What do they like to do in their free time? Who do they have an affinity to? What kind of brands? Where else do they shop? What do they watch on Netflix? Do they go to the movies? What do they do in their free time? What do they do with their discretionary income? All of those sorts of things help you to kind of get a picture of who that target market is. And some of you will have this like naturally inside of you, and some of you will be like, I don't get it. And that's okay. That's okay. If you don't get it right away, hopefully by the time you're done, you will. The brand that you're creating is probably something you're passionate about, and so your target market might actually be someone like you. I'm hoping it's not, because it's kind of nice when you dig outside of yourself. Um, you're all in really your egocentric stage of life, I'm sorry to say, but you're kind of like thinking about yourself, which is what you're supposed to be doing. But marketing is really just getting outside of yourself and thinking about other people. And if you get nothing else out of this class, that's really what I want you to think about is that not every customer and every company is just like you. There's so many different things. So these are a lot of aspects you want to think about with your target market. I just talked about most of them. Also geographics, like where do they live? Where do they come from? If it's an internet-based business, like what are the backlinks? What are some links that take you to this page? So for example, if you're shopping for a kayak, where do you find links that would take you to your site? So maybe you're shopping on Cabela's for a kayak made by your company. In Cabela's, it links it to your company to purchase the kayak. That's not a great example, but so think about where they come from. What's their income range? Usually that's expressed annually, not monthly or weekly. What is their education level? Do they typically have a high school diploma, a 2-year degree, 4-year degree? What are their motivations? What makes them buy your product or service or follow you? What are their goals in life? What are their pain points? Like what makes them just cringe? Who are the influencers in their lives, and who are their brand affinities? Who do they relate to the most? And you can think about the assignment that you did on Friday um, about all of those different brands that you had an affinity to that you really appreciated, and what made you like them. So that you're probably the target market of those brands. We all know who we want to shop at our place or buy our products. Like we want rich people who have a lot of money and want to buy all the products, but is that true of our target market? Maybe not. So think deeper than that. So what you're going to be doing is creating a persona on your target market. I'm going to show you what that looks like. There are some examples on slide 7. There are some persona examples on the internet. I'll show you those. Actually, I'm not going to show you those. And then there's some student examples. So here's 3, and I'm just going to show you what I want yours to look like. So normally if we were in class together, I would have you create this whole slideshow like these students did. Normally what I have them do is pick 2 products that are competing for the same with the same type of product, but they have 2 different target audiences. So you're not going to do this whole assignment, you're just going to do one little part of it. So this is an example of a student group that was Hydro Flask versus Yeti. So they talked about the characteristics of Hydro Flask and the target audience demographics, which is age, income, occupation, lifestyle. And if I say a word and you're like not familiar with it, then Google it because I don't want to make these screencasts forever. And then geographics, where do their customers come from? Psychographics, what's really important to them. Psychographics is probably the most important thing when you're developing your persona. So trying to get inside of their head. So this is the persona that I want you to develop. So an example would be a picture of that person, maybe a name, first and last is fine, age, gender, income, ethnic background, and a little paragraph. The paragraph is really what I want you to focus on. And again, slides are normally 6 by 6, except with your persona, you can have a full paragraph on it. So this is an example of one. And if you look back on the slide, there's 2 more examples with different types of target market. And again, they have 2 different competing-ish types of businesses. And then they have a little bit of background information on their customers, and you are developing their persona. So this is the NASCAR target market persona. They picked kind of a common name. I would try to find something a little bit more interesting. Um, you don't necessarily need to choose things that are controversial like race unless it's really important to your target market. They put white on here because it's typically a white man that follows NASCAR, but if it's not relevant, then don't put it. Usually like sexual orientation can be part of this, but if it's not relevant, you don't need to include it. Same with religion. Religion is usually not a factor for most businesses, so then you don't need to include it. So you're going to create a persona for your target and your secondary audience. So take a look at those when you're creating your persona. And so you're going to include a picture and a short description. After reading it, we should be able to really understand who this person is, how they fit into your brand that you're developing, and you may need to go back and tweak this because you haven't really developed your brand yet. Save it in your doc, notebook, Pinterest, mood board, slideshow, whatever you're assembling. You'll be sharing this information on Friday this week in your check-in. The other thing I want you to know about is positioning. So this one's actually pretty easy to understand. There's a little bit of a definition down here and then an example of product positioning, but you see it every single day. So as you're developing your brand, you really want to think about the story that you're creating, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow with branding, and how you want people to perceive you. So do you want to have like a dollar store image, or do you want to have an image of being exclusive? Do you want to be like a Kohl's where you have low prices and all different types of products? Or do you want to be a Target where you have a positive image with middle class 40-year-old women with good quality products and reasonable prices? Or do you want to have an image like Nordstrom's where you're super high end exclusivity? That's a tiny market that can afford your product. So think about how you want to be positioned. There's a lab that gives a lot more detail that I'm going to give you on this one slide. So what is your competitive advantage as your positioning? So it could be defined by your features, how your product was created, the reliability of the product, the purpose for creating it, like Tom's shoes were created to raise money for people who need shoes, how you're pricing it, how people are using it, the class of the product, like different styles or class, or you might notice that they have like the same headphones at Walmart and Best Buy, but they're different classes of products, or the promotions that they use. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these just because my screencasts are getting too long. But in class, I would probably give you at least a 15-minute on these 2 concept. So do a little digging yourself on what you want your position to look like, how you want people to perceive you, and what you are going to do for that. So you'll be turning in some updates on Friday, and that is it for today. I hope that you enjoyed today. Get yourself some Swedish fish or drop some off for Mr. Curtis on May 6th. Have a great day. Bye.